Welcome to Cross Platform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we are going to be talking about organizing your notes. And as we were thinking in the topic, it made me think on my notes, on my paper notes, and since when I have paper and digital, and it is interesting. They have moved my. I have more digitals than
hmm
paper. I'm not a big paper guy. I basically see in paper is because I'm legally obligated to hold it. Everything else I try to digitize, and technology now make it even more simpler and easier. That said, as I was preparing for this episode, I noticed, well, this requires a lot more thinking than I thought that my system was going to be a lot more solid than what I found it to be
Right.
when I start researching for this. So
That is one of the things that this is very revealing is as we do not just this particular topic, but every topic we address on the show, as I start to explore that topic in advance, I realize, wait a minute, this is a mess. How did this get to be a mess? It because it's not clearly as defined as what we're used to explaining to people. All of a sudden you go back and you look at it and go, wait a minute, this kind of got off the rails a little bit. And notes is a perfect example of that. We were talking about this in the pre-show that notes are the most unstructured, undefined piece of content that you will have in your system. It can be anything. I mean, you're talking about things like plain text notes, uh, regular handwritten notes if you're doing digital ink, images, any number of different things can come into your system. You don't know what it's going to be before it becomes a note as per se. And then it's got to go into the same bucket as all this other type of stuff. It's the one thing that just is a catch-all for all things.
it is, and that was part of what was very interesting. Is as I was looking at my own system, I was like, oh, I really need to spend more time defining this, and I wish to tell you I have defined it before we start recording, but that's not true. So what I hope is to get a couple of ideas and maybe bring and revisit this topic after we polish our own, and we will cover more during the show why we believe into this. And but but let's begin into, why notes, or what are notes,
Mm-hmm.
and what is difficult. And if you go to the paper world, normally you will have a notebook where all those types of information are or posted or stuff. That is fine. When you go now and digitize all that, what is that information that you are saving? And more importantly, can you refer back to that
Mm-hmm.
information? Can you access that information? And what can be some of the good practice for people to look at that information?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. The I have this separation in my mind. At what point does a note become data? Because I'm a database guy. I love databases. I love organizing things using databases. It's an easy way for me to wrap my head around content. So when I start to think about things like notes, it's as soon as I create a note, there's some data that I can attach to it to be able to use it more effectively. What is the topic of the note? When did it get created? What was its purpose? All of these pieces get attached to the note. The trick is to have a system that allows you to do that, to leverage it. Otherwise, if you don't have that data, you might as well literally just be writing it down on a legal pad in sequence. And even then, for the most bizarre interpretation, if you're using more than one legal pad, technically you're creating data around your notes, because I'm willing to bet that one legal pad's for one topic and another legal pad's for another topic. So you've already applied some sort of categorization to the notes themselves. So for a note, in my mind, a note is something that is not a calendar entry, a to-do list entry, and it's something you need to keep. So if you define it that way, well, now wait, that's pretty much an open bucket. What can I do with it? Where I start to challenge myself and get into problems is the different ways of capturing notes by its inherency creates confusion. So for example, I'm a big one for using index cards. I like to have a stack of index cards next to me at any time just to quick jot something down. In theory, do I need to use an index card to jot something down? No. Just about every app, including the apps I use, have the ability to take a, quote, sticky note. I could make it all digital. I could eliminate that step. Do I do it? No. I have a big pile of index cards on my desk. Why? Because that's the way I work. That's the convenient part. So if that part is going to be convenient, I then have to decide, how does that get into my system? Well, a couple ways. I can retype it. In a lot of cases, I do that. I retype it based on the tool. In other cases, I'll take a photo of a card or a photo of a document or a photo of something else, and that goes into my system. Or I'll take digital ink notes on my tablet, which are basically what I did on the index card if I'm consolidating several of them and I feel like writing. Notice this is a feeling thing, not a factual or a functional thing. It's me wanting to use this particular medium. That goes into this, but they all have to go into the same system or else they're unmanageable. I can't find them afterwards. And we're going to talk about that later on, how important that step is. But I'm curious for you, how do you deal with all your different intakes, or how many different intake methods do you have? Do you just narrow everything down to one, or do you use a variety like I do?
I simplify a lot more than what you simplify in that sense. There are two stages for the information. Stage one is Evernote. Mm-hmm. And I don't go to Evernote. I don't use Evernote in my daily life. I pay for Evernote because that is like a big archive file, mm-hmm. okay, where I can dump anything that is done. And Evernote does something very, very good, indexing. They can get my scratch. Mm-hmm. How they index my handwriting, don't ask me, but they do it. Okay, what I cannot read, they can. So, and that's a place where I dump a lot of these notes because of that reason. The rest of the stuff tend to live in notes on the iPhone. And why? Because you can put images, you can put stuff. So from this retrieve information, okay, if I cannot find something on notes, then I fire Evernote. Sorry, mm-hmm. And I fire Evernote, and then I can search for things that are older. But a lot of it lives there. The other thing that I do is I have some of this information living on my task management. So, for example, say my daughter, we got her ticket for a swimming camp in 2 weeks. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I got the digital tickets. So part of that gets forward to the task management, and the other part gets storage into the node. So
okay,
I sometimes, many times, duplicate the information that way, but that allows me to simplify the searching for, because it is, as you said, hard for me to define on many of these ones what is data, what is not. Even when you look at the tickets, okay, do I need the tickets as a reference only, or do I'm going to need the information that is contained in there for something else later? Mm-hmm. And how will be my brain be able to find it faster? And what I have discovered with that is duplication helped me. And being digital, super easy to duplicate. So I duplicate a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about the duplication part of it, because that's one of the inherent dilemmas I have in my system. Like I said, I like to use paper. That's me. Old school on that.
Right.
I will use paper to capture a lot of stuff, and then I will transfer it over. One of the biggest hurdles I had to do is give myself permission to do that, because common knowledge in productivity circles is never do things twice. Well, okay, fine. That's their common knowledge, not mine. If I want to do it twice, I'm going to do it twice. The challenge I get into is the two primary tools I use for note management. I use OneNote, as everyone is likely to know, and I also use Notion. I've been using Notion quite a bit. There is a limitation on each side of the fence that causes problems for me. On the OneNote side, there's no easy way to attach that data that I mentioned earlier to make it easy to categorize and organize. I have to follow the notebook metaphor that OneNote follows. I have to create a notebook, I have to create sections, I create pages, and then stuff's in there. I can use search to find things, and it's very good at indexing, say, textual content in images and indexing handwritten content. It's really good with that, but I can't create a database out of it. I can't create a database of my pages. Just won't let me. It doesn't have that capability.
Correct.
Notion, on the flip side, has that. Has the ability to create a database table. I can create a page in every line of that database table, store as much stuff I want as I want in those pages. I can even put extra databases in those pages. But what it can't do is recognize handwriting. It can't take digital ink, and it can't do an OCR read of an image.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I can't even do a direct photo into it. It's really awkward. I have to do an upload. So those are all limits. So one does almost what I need, and the other one does almost what I need, and they don't seem to want to meet in the middle. So I don't have a clear option in my system to say, this is what goes here, what goes there.
Okay, but I have that same issue with my notebook. Okay. The proverbial paper notebook that we have, okay, the index card equivalent, all that, okay, it's a digital notebook in GoodNotes. Okay,
right.
That's what it is for me. That's what I do, scratches when I'm making notes with a pencil, everything else. And what I do is I process that. Okay, sometimes the process take a screenshot of the page and archive it, Evernote or whatever it goes. But what I have learned is nothing that is on that notebook, okay, it's other than inbox to be processed.
Okay.
So whatever note, drawing, image, anything, okay, for me is just to be able to input. So this is, and I have, when I process, I tend to scratch. So that way, if I go later, I know what pages were processed, what pages were not processed. And that requires sometimes to, yes, I did handwriting the note and now I need to type it to make it, or those kind of things. But that make it really, really powerful.
Yeah, I struggle with some of the aspects of notes because, and you can see it reflected in the two tools I use. OneNote is such an open structure. It is just drag boxes here, put drawings there, whatever. It is a open sheet of paper. It is as close to a paper analog as I have on the digital side. The flip side, Notion provides the database structure. Gives me all that data capability. If I wanted to, for example, take a photo of a note in my paper notebook, I could do that. I could take the photo, I could upload it to Notion, but to take advantage of being able to find stuff in it easily in that photo, I have to manually populate the data into the record that contains the information for that photo. That's a good thing and it's a bad thing. I think if we get too dependent on the automated systems reading images and reading digital handwriting and reading documents for us, we can get sloppy because we don't think about the information that we're trying to organize and we don't think about ways to categorize it and use it effectively. And we haven't even started to talk about the fact of recall.
Correct.
Which I think really is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to note taking, because we can capture all day long. We've got crazy good systems for capturing documents and capturing information. But how do you get it back when you need it? And how do you get the right, relevant information back when you need it? This is, again, one of those dilemmas I have. The one tool I have uses a synchronized mode. So I have a copy of those files and those notes with me offline. The other one requires connectivity at all times.
Correct.
Is that a problem for many people? Well, those in privileged high-tech environments? No, it's easy. You go someplace where you don't have connectivity, it's an issue. If all your stuff and structure and access information is stored up in the cloud and you can't get to it, notes are one of those things that it can really cause a problem. So you have to plan for those pieces of it. But that's where I think the recall part actually becomes more important than the capture. Because it's easy to over-capture. If you think about your notes, the collection of notes that you have, what would you say is the percentage of those notes that you would likely be able to go through and just throw out because you've never looked at them since you took them?
I haven't. There is no reason for me to throw them out ever. You can look in here.
Okay.
You can look in my system and search for stuff that has 10 years
Okay.
that I have passed. Okay. There is no reason. Why?
And everything's based on search, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's where you can do that.
Folders and search. I have folders and search. I do fold, but I also use search heavily. Yes.
Yeah, and
If
that's where you can do that.
Right.
Is you can go through, if you are counting on the tool and your tool is good enough to be able to auto-index your content, then yeah, there's really no reason to throw it. And you know what a perfect example of that, and it has nothing to do with notes, is Gmail. So many people keep thousands and thousands and thousands of email. I have almost hundreds of thousands of emails stored in Gmail. Why? Because there's no reason to throw them out. If I need it, I can search for it. It's not tying up any space. The space it ties up is negligible. But that one time that I need it, yeah, then it's valuable. So let's think a little bit more about recall. Specifically, how do you go through and get stuff back out of your system? You just said search. But how do you search? Do you search based on titles? Do you search based on content? Do you search based on keywords? Do you have a structure that you follow? Or is it just whatever comes to the top of head?
I wish to tell you I have a structure, and the answer to that is no. That sometimes require, when you start looking and you say, okay, restaurant. Okay, and it put restaurant, say, okay, I cannot find. I know I have a note that have that. Okay, and then you start, trying to change the keywords. And a lot of times when I finally found it, then I add the first keyword that I thought, because I may have put it for, fantastic seafood place. Okay, it's great, but I think on restaurant, not a fantastic seafood place. So I come and update those notes often.
Yeah, see, that's it's an interesting dilemma, and again, I think it's the search dilemma, because with a tool like a Notion, you can kind of do both. You can have a lot of stuff in there. You can just throw stuff in there if you want, but it doesn't lend itself to that. A tool like OneNote lends itself to doing that, just bulk throwing stuff in there. And a perfect example is the one notebook I have in there called Things to Read. And the Things to Read is the default definition or destination for my web clipper. So if I'm going through and I read an article or I see something of interest, I'll just hit that, send it to Things to Read, and then move on. I know it's in there. I know it's full text in there, which is the other thing. I'm not grabbing just a link. I'm actually grabbing the full text of the article. I can go back and read it but there's no organization to it. There's no structure. I can't go back easily and say, let me find everything about this particular topic.
And that is where there is a task in my thing that says organize, and I have ebooks, articles, movies, and a bunch of things. Okay, the different tasks that happen at different time of the year. Okay, and some of them happen multiple times a year. Articles is one of those because I love to clip articles in Instapaper. Okay, but then, as you said, they lose the power. if they stay on the inbox.
Yeah.
So what I do is once a quarter, okay, I sit in Instapaper and process and organize.
Yeah.
Sometimes as I read, I say, oh, this should be in here, or this is trash and delete it. But it doesn't happen every time. Sometimes I'm reading and enjoying reading. Okay? I don't want to be thinking on the organization. So once a quarter, I go and sit, and now anything that is not being classified goes into appropriate folders, and that make my Instapaper really really powerful because I can go and open and say, okay, I want to read things about iPad. Okay, and there is folders about things, different things for the iPads. But I don't consider those notes. Those are
Mm-hmm.
articles for me, material, same as the books. Um, what I tend to do more is, and that's the reason now that I'm thinking about this. For example, I have my journaling, and we have discussed here on the show my technology card. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and my technology card is just a note. Okay, inside of all this. Okay, and as I'm thinking into this, my technology card lives in three places. Lived in where my tasks are. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
live on my notes on the Apple Notes, and lived in the journal application that I use day one. Okay, why? Because when I'm going to, let's say right now, I'm going to, last weekend my iPad made machine die. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. So it went for repair, and I found myself I need a replacement. So I've been testing a couple of things, but I want to make sure that that thinking process gets part of the technology card.
Yeah.
Okay, and actually the iPad Mini, okay, got promoted inside of the
Mm-hmm.
technology card because now that is the backup machine. Okay, and I want to, when I get back my iPad from the repair store, I want to make sure that whatever is on that machine, apps, links, etc., are replicated in the iPad Mini. So in the case that happen again, I can be really fully working. Can I have everything? Yes, I have uh, one password and many other things. Could I was able to? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the process completely painless. No, actually, what the first thing I brought was my old big iPad, and when I brought that, one is too slow now, I think, and second, it did not, because I had not used for any of that, didn't have many of the things. So I need to start thinking what I have, and then say, oh, it's too slow. Okay, let me bring it back to where it was. Let me try with the iPad Mini, and but I didn't want to lose that
Right.
thinking. And so after I journal about it and
Mm-hmm.
clean up the final notes, then that journal entry, that is now the new update version of the technology card, went to where I have all my tasks and went to the notes application. And the old one was replaced. But if I ever want to see what was my technology card in 2019, I
Mm.
can look and search technology card, and it will be on my journal app.
Just as an aside, I started my own technology card. I started
Good.
one this past week, created a note in OneNote, and my card is basically comprised of what's the type of thing that I need to do and what's the tool I use to do it. What's the type of
Right.
thing, what's the tool I should use. And I've already found it has stopped me from going and searching for new tools to do things just because of lack of focus.
Mhm.
I was walking through an exercise that I had to do earlier of trying to identify a tool to do a particular task. And I looked at 3 different services. And I'm like, wait, I already have something for this. I have something that'll do it just fine. And I can use it and I can avoid cost and I can implement based on what knowledge already is. It was worthwhile right there. That made it worthwhile. That went into a note in OneNote. To follow up on the things to read thing where you organize your information in Instapaper. If you look at my things to read notebook in OneNote, there are sections that are topic based. And what I do when I process the notebook is as I go through and I see an article, it's like, oh, this was interesting and this was really about productivity. I will move it to the productivity section and I just do that. And I have all those sections in the notebook itself. The one thing that I kind of like for that purpose, and this is just a me thing, inside of OneNote, I can go to a section and I can say export this entire section as a PDF file. So I can take all the information I've gathered around a particular topic and it will dump all of it out as one contiguous PDF file for reference.
Oh,
So if I'm
nice.
doing research on a topic, I can make copies of pages into that topic and then
Right.
go back and say dump all of it as a reference guide. That I have found very useful on occasion when, especially when I'm working up, say, a presentation and I want to have reference materials available to it. I can tie those pieces. But again, I lack the ability to do some of the database searching and filtering that I would normally want to do from a data perspective. It's a dilemma, but it's a dilemma that's not insurmountable by any stretch. I can work around it. I mean, I've done it before. I can certainly do it again.
But you
So,
see, now that we have, I don't know if we have unraveled the spaghetti or we have wrapped ourselves into the spaghetti. I'm not completely sure, but and I and I may do something that you may, I don't know what, I don't know how you're going to react to what I'm going to say, but I think we need to do a second part of this episode,
oh yeah,
not in 2 weeks, next week, in which let's go now that we have again wrap ourselves in this spaghetti.
yeah,
Okay, what I think it will be really effective is if you and I go now with what we could not explain very well, or at least
hmm
I could not explain very well into all these differences because I didn't consider my Insta paper. I didn't consider the journal. I mentioned it, but when we prepare the notes, I didn't consider all those pieces. So how about we go and then
hmm
in a week time we go into really document this
yeah.
process for you and for me, and then let's share to our listeners that document. Let's share with our, let's come back and re-record and understand where the holes were
hmm
or where the things that we may not have been considered as a complement to this show.
I think it's a great idea. I think there's definitely a purpose to that, if for no other reason than to provide ourselves the kind of navel gazing experience as to taking a closer look at our processes from the outside and say, okay, do they work? Do they not work? Where is it working? Where is it not functioning? Already, I'm just standing here brainstorming. How can I provide that data functionality to OneNote? What can I do to do that? And how do I get to that point? There are structures that I can put into place, but I won't know if they will work or not until I take that time. I dedicate a period of time to look at the tools rather than looking at the content and then going
Correct.
from there.
And I think for me, one of the things that I noticed it as we were coming back and forward is, oh, it's been a while since I really put deep thought into this, and probably was the last
Yeah.
time I when Apple, I think was iOS 13 or 14, when they started allowing you to do better things with notes,
Mm-hmm.
than I moved from where I was to notes. So it's been a while,
Yeah.
and I really want to again come back next week and make a better structure of what it is, and maybe what I changed because of this thinking time.
Yeah. I'm all in there with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'll do this exercise this week and we can come back
This
and
is the
revisit
moment
it.
that you are happy that the co-host didn't kill you.
No, no,
You
I
do
think
this
this
in
is good.
life.
This is, you were talking about from the beginning, doing the right work. This is the right work to do.
Correct.
Because if we go through that analysis and we come out with end results, the work that we are going to do afterwards will be better and it will
I
not
agree.
be as hard.
I
So,
agree. So with this, we are going to stop the show today and follow us where you like to listen podcast, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on
mhm.
personalproductivity.club where we have a channel and we are Augusto Pinaud on our Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device.